Well, good morning, everybody. It's a great joy to be able to be with you again this morning. I'm very, very grateful to your rector, to the Reverend Goodenough, for very kindly inviting me. Thank you, my brother, very, very much indeed. Friends, we're doing a series on Philippians 3, 1 to 11. And we started last week by giving you a clear definition of real Christianity. And we contrasted that with so much that is nominal and ritualistic. And we ended off by giving you the three distinctives of a real Christian. What we're going to do this morning is continue with that passage that our brother Trevor very kindly read to us. And in verses 4 to 8, we are going to cover how do I become a real Christian. So let's pray and ask God to help us. Our gracious and our loving Father in heaven, we are so glad to be here this morning. We love meeting with your people. We love enjoying fellowship with each other. But above all, to sing these glorious hymns to you, Lord, and to listen to your word and to spend time with our precious children means the world to us. And now we pray for your Spirit. This familiar passage, help us to understand it, Lord. And I pray that you will bring every one of us to the same point that you brought Paul in your goodness. And teach us that very simple lesson that we showed our children, that the rest of eternity depends on what we do in this life. And we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Let me read again that amazing testimony of Paul. He says, if anyone thinks that he has reason to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, in regards to the law, a Pharisee, and as for zeal, persecuting the church, as for legalistic righteousness, faultless. But, that word, but whatever was to my profit, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I've lost all things, but consider them rubbish, that I may gain Christ, and to be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own. Now, if you haven't, I would recommend you go to your library, and there's bound to be a book there by a man called A.W. Tozer. It's an amazing writer many years ago, and he's written a book that is called Why Revival Tarries. It's brilliant. But in that book, he speaks about the Apostle Paul. And I quote, he says, Paul was the world's most successful Christian. His career, the most astonishing in world history. If you listen to Oswald Sanders, he put it like this. Here was a method worthy of God to select the most aggressive and influential enemy of the church, the bitterest persecutor, and then to transform him into the greatest apostle, the profoundest theologian, the most persuasive apologist, and the most tireless missionary that the church has ever known. Those are lovely words. It's an absolute miracle what happened. And that's what I want to share with you today. I want to show you what God did to a man by the name of Saul of Tarsus and transformed this man into the Apostle Paul. You'll be glad to know there are just 2 points this morning, but a couple of sub-points. But 2 main points that Paul is going to teach us, friends. The first thing is, he's going to give us his background and bankruptcy. All right? His background and his bankruptcy. And then the second point is he's going to explain his conversion and his consecration to Christ. It's a beautiful story of the grace of God. So let's listen to Paul telling us about his background. He tells us 3 things. The first thing he tells us is what he personally felt. It was personal. See verse 4? Though I might also have confidence in the flesh. If anyone thinks he has whereof he might trust in the flesh, I have more. My dear friends, it's interesting to notice there that Paul is not talking here about everybody. For a moment, he's speaking about himself. He's giving his own personal testimony, his own individual story. He's going to explain how he personally had come to a saving knowledge of Jesus. It's a personal story. And I hope this morning that every one of us are able to say that. By the grace and the mercy and love and compassion of God, I was born again on the 5th of May, 1967. A day one will never ever forget. The day Jesus opened my eyes to the gospel. It was clear. It was glorious. It was wonderful. Changed my life. Set me on another completely different road to what I wanted to do. You see, a testimony is personal. The second thing is, he explains what his parents gave to him. Look at verse 5. He says, I was circumcised on the 8th day. Now, you would have all heard that from the teaching of Reverend Goodenough, that goes all the way back to Genesis, to chapter 17 and verse 12, and also to Leviticus and chapter 12 and verse 3. God laid down that their son was to be circumcised on the 8th day. It was a sign, it was a seal that they belonged to the children of God. So later Isaac was circumcised on the 8th day in Genesis 21, and then Jesus was circumcised in Luke chapter 2 and verse 21. My parents gave me the rite of circumcision. He's looking back over his life, and his mother and father did everything they could to bring up their son according to their law, circumcised. He tells us, secondly, what his parents gave him. He was of the people of Israel. They did not belong to a mixed group like so many of those living in Palestine in those days. He was saying that he was a direct descendant, not only from Abraham, not only from Isaac, but he was a direct descendant from Jacob. He belonged to a very, very privileged, special people. That's what my parents gave me. Thirdly, he says, I was of the tribe of Benjamin. Again, your pastor would have reminded you to belong to the tribe of Benjamin was to belong to Israel's elite, the highest of their aristocracy. He was given a place of honor. The tribe of Benjamin were given the key place in the line of battle. If you look at Judges 5, Israel's first king was from the tribe of Benjamin in 1 Samuel 9. Benjamin himself, you may remember, was a son of Rachel. So Paul looks back. He says, I want to tell you my story. I was very, very, very privileged. I came from the aristocracy. I was given the very, very best that people could have been given. Circumcised, of the tribe of Benjamin. I was from the people of Israel. And he says, I was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. So this man looks back to a very privileged background. Thirdly, about his past, he then goes on to tell us what he himself personally attained. And he says, as touching the law, I was a Pharisee and the son of a Pharisee. And he was incredibly proud of that. Now, brothers and sisters, just for a minute, when you go through the life of Jesus and the Gospels, you develop an incredibly negative view of the Pharisees because they clashed with Jesus. They emphasized all the outward aspects of religion. Jesus emphasized the inside. But when they started, it started in the intertestamental period. You must admire them in this way, that they were tired of all the secularism of their religion. They were tired of all the compromise in their religion. They were tired of what they saw as dead Judaism, and they said, we are going to form a brand new sect called the Pharisees, and we are going to try and live according to the strict observance of the law. They were incredibly strict. They were incredibly devout. They were very, very serious about their religion. Paul says, I was one of them. He wasn't an atheist. He wasn't an agnostic. He wasn't anti-God. He was a Pharisee. Not only that, he says, as to zeal persecuting the church, he was so sincere and so devout and so committed to his religion that he hated Jesus and he hated Christianity with a passion. So you'll remember all these things, but when they were stoning Stephen, they took off their jacket and they put all their clothes at the feet of this man, Saul of Tarsus. He was on the road to Damascus to go and imprison people. He was violently, strongly opposed to Christianity. But the third thing he tells us was that according to the law, he was blameless. Blameless. You know what that means, if I may clarify that, dear friends? Morally, he was blameless. You were not able to come to Saul of Tarsus and bring a valid criticism against this character of this man. So Alec Mottier put it so beautifully in his commentary. Listen to what he said. Here, therefore, is a man at his most privileged. He is most moral. He is most religious. He is most zealous. And when you put it all together, Paul says, but I count everything my parents gave me. I count everything that I personally have attained. I count all these things as loss. Because now I found Christ. All of those things, he goes on to say, were rubbish. Because they couldn't bring him into a personal relationship with God. See, my brothers and sisters, you and I, like Saul of Tarsus became Paul, you and I are born sinners. So you come into the world. We are born separated from God. We are born totally depraved. And as we get older, it becomes more evident. And what our sin has done, it separates us from God. So there's this massive gap between God and us. Our sin has separated us from God. So what do? Just like Saul, we try religion. We try morality. We try doing good. We try living a good life, believing and thinking that that will bring us to God. But it won't. You know, I know it's old, but I love those old hymns, eh? And you know the one hymn goes like this. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust my sweetest frame, but I wholly lean on Jesus' name. So on Jesus, the rock, I stand. Let me pause for a minute and give you a good illustration of this. His name was John Wesley. Now, you may have heard of John Wesley, the man who founded the Methodist Church, and arguably through church history, one of the greatest churchmen ever. Listen to his story, and I quote from his diary. It's now 2 years and almost 4 months since I left my family and my home to go and teach the Indian people in America about Christianity. But what I learned was that I went to America to convert others, but I myself was not converted. Do you know, my friend, that's a staggering statement. John Wesley was an ordained minister, baptizing children, taking Holy Communion, burying the dead, preaching Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. He went to Oxford University, got the finest education. His dad was a minister, so he's got it all. He's been brought up by a pastor. He's studied at the leading university in the world, and he's decided to give it all up and to become a missionary. So he leaves England and he goes across to America with his brother Charles. And his passion was, I went to convert the people there and to bring them to God. But as I was preaching and as I was teaching, I came to the realization, I'm not saved. I'm telling other people to get converted, but I'm not converted. And he felt an absolute, total, complete and utter failure. He gets on the boat and he goes back home, disillusioned, depressed, discouraged. And on the boat he met a Moravian missionary by the name of Peter Bowler. And Peter Bowler explained the gospel to John Wesley. This is what he says. Then I learned that I have fallen short of the glory of God, that my own heart is corrupt and abominable, that my whole life before God is as filthy rags. I now understood that I was a child of wrath, an heir of hell, and that all my good works, being a minister, being a missionary, my own sufferings, my own righteousness, are so far from making any atonement for even the least of my sins. Peter Bowley explained it to him. 4 months later, he gets back to his little room at Oxford University in May 1738. And I've actually visited that room. And somebody was teaching him from the book of Romans. And he was reading Martin Luther's commentary on Romans. And the light came into John Wesley's life. He was converted. Became a Christian. Realized that Jesus had done everything that was needed for his salvation on the cross. He didn't need to trust his own good works or his own religion or what his parents gave him. And he put his faith in Christ. His brother wrote these words. He says, and can it be that I should gain an interest in the Saviour's blood? Died he for me who caused his pain? For me who him to death pursued? Amazing love. How can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? No condemnation now I dread. Jesus and all in him is mine. Alive in him my living head and clothed in righteousness divine. That's what he tells me. And so he looks at his upbringing, his privileges, his religion, everything. He says, you know what? Rubbish. I've now found God. I'm found by God. Put his faith in Christ. His sins were forgiven. He was imputed with Christ's righteousness. He became a Christian. It's a beautiful story. Just secondly, his conversion. Paul now was marvelously saved through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. And then he says this in verse 8. He says, what is more, I consider everything loss compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ as my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things, but I consider them rubbish, that I may gain Christ. As a result of his conversion, as a result of God's grace reaching down into this man's life, drawing him to put his faith and trust into Jesus Christ, there were 4 things that now were real for Paul. Number 1, he had a great longing to know Christ. He says, I count all things but loss for the excellency of knowing Christ Jesus as my Lord. You know what, brothers? You know what, my sisters? That is a real Christian. See, not just someone who comes to church, goes to Bible study, sings the hymns. They may not necessarily, like John Wesley, be saved. When you are really born again by the Spirit of God, you develop an incredible hunger, an incredible thirst for knowing Jesus. Sorry, just one other one. His name was Henry Martin. He was only 29 years of age. He goes as a missionary to Persia. And he died 5 years later. But he wrote these words before he died. He said, my heart has been growing hard and cold. Let me be taught, dear Lord, that the first great business honor of a missionary is not to fulfill the Great Commission. It's the sanctification of my own heart. May the Lord in mercy to me save me from putting up any idol of any sort, which I can do by preferring a work that is for him rather than to communion with him. It's very strong. Are you growing in your knowledge of Jesus? Did you spend time this morning reading the Bible? Did you spend time praying to this Jesus? And yesterday, a real Christian has an unquenchable hunger to know Jesus. Number 2. This is so fantastic, isn't it? To know Jesus Christ, my Lord. 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 Is a sad teaching that is very prevalent that says you can come to Jesus as your Savior and then later on you can come to know him as your Lord. That's not the Bible. A real Christian comes to the place where Jesus Christ is Lord. 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 Everything is surrendered to Christ. Absolute, total, complete. He was 30 when he died. His name was Jim Elliot. He went to a group of people as a missionary together with Nate Saint and the others. And on the 3rd day of reaching into that group of people, they stabbed him to death. But he wrote these beautiful words. He says, Father, take my life. Take my blood if you want. But consume me with your enveloping fire. I don't want to save it. It's not mine to save. You can have it all, Lord. Have it all. I want to pour out my life for you as an oblation for the world. Make me thy fuel, the flame of God. Jeepers. And he left behind his wife Elizabeth and a little girl, Valerie. You see, friends, Christianity is not half measures. Not like that at all. It's not a summer sport. It's a total 100% commitment. Remember that hymn? Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. That's it. Paul says, I want to know Jesus now. I want to be absolutely surrendered to him as my Lord. And number 3, for whom I have suffered the loss of everything. Well, you all know that. Paul says in 2 Corinthians, I've worked harder, I've been put in jail more often, I've been whipped time without number, I've faced death again and again. 5 times I received the terrible 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I've been shipwrecked. And I look into my own little life and I say, what on earth have I ever had to suffer compared to this man? The point is, Paul is saying, with my new life, Jesus is everything to me now. All that I had in the past, all my morality, all my religion, all my aristocracy, it's all rubbish. Because now I found Christ. Oh, I want to know him. I want him to be the Lord. And I'm willing to suffer everything. He got back to England. And people kept on saying, but David Livingstone, how can you keep going? You've sacrificed so much. This is what he said. Please, don't talk to me of the word sacrifice that I've made in spending so much of my life in Africa. Can you call that sacrifice? Which is simply acknowledging the great debt I owe to God, which I can never repay? Is that a sacrifice? No. It may bring a little anxiety, sickness, suffering, danger. I may have to give up the common conveniences of life, but it never was a sacrifice. My Jesus, my life, my all. I dedicate my whole life to you. And I pray that you will give me grace to finish the job that you want me to do. That's a real Christian. That's a real Christian. And then lastly, number 4. Satisfaction. And I count all the past as done in order that I may win Christ. You know what, my precious friends? I wish we could tell the world this. You can have your money. You can have your success. You can have your honors. You can have your fancy homes. You may have all of that. But it's nothing compared to knowing Jesus. C.S. Lewis put it like this: give yourself up, and you will find your real self. Lose your life, and you will save it. Submit to death to all your little ambitions and favorite wishes every day, and look to Christ. And you will find in Him everything. A real Christian's passion is to know Him, to be totally consecrated, to be willing to suffer anything, and to experience unbelievable satisfaction. Let us pray. Father, what an incredible story. Please forgive me, Lord. Please forgive us for putting so many other things where Jesus should be. Forgive us. Please take us home with a fresh desire to know Jesus, to be consecrated to Him, to be willing to suffer if need be, but to find in Christ our complete satisfaction. In Jesus' name, amen.